Last week, we talked about understanding your hidden mental barriers. What are they? The impact they have on your life? Why understanding them matters. And I shared a few ways to start breaking free from them. I really hope you found that information valuable. This week, we're going to dive a little deeper into two hidden mental barriers I mentioned last time: societal and gender conditioning. These are really big ones and really deep-rooted. To start us off today, I want you to think about your last big life decision. Maybe it was your career choice, accepting a new job or promotion, a change in relationship status, or where you live now. Thinking back on this decision, I want you to ask yourself, why did I make this decision? What did I think this decision would do for me? Was this truly my decision? Or was I doing something because I thought I should? Were you following a script written by society long before you were even born? I know for me, this has certainly been the case. Years ago, I remember accepting promotions or changing jobs because of the title they provided or the prestige and money, all because I should be moving up in my career, right? Maybe. But I never felt like I was living my life. It felt like I was doing what society expected of me. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on this type of invisible programming that might be running your life too, just like it ran mine for many years. So what exactly is societal and gender conditioning? Let me break down at a high level what I mean by that. First, these are the unwritten rules we absorb from childhood. One example I think about are what I call life's order of operations. We're born, we go to school, we get a job, we get married, we buy a house, we have kids, we retire, and then we die. I know, slightly sad and cringy, but it's what many of us grew up seeing and believing, myself included. Second, conditioning also applies to the proper way to behave based on our gender. And this is super deep-rooted and can really vary by culture as well. And the conditioning starts early. Depending on when you grew up, you were most likely told to believe that first there were only two genders, and that the traits for males and females were clearly defined. For example, men could be more aggressive and women had to be more passive. Or men went to work to make money and women stayed home, a la the 1950s. This conditioning is then carried into future experiences and interactions, which color our view of the world and how we experience it. Another example of societal conditioning is society's definition of success and failure. I was laid off from my first job after graduating college, and because society had really programmed me to believe that not having a job is bad, I felt like I had no other choice but to quickly find something else for fear of being viewed as a failure. It really was less about doing work I loved and more about just doing work, period. A fourth example of conditioning are cultural expectations about things like life milestones. While this one varies by culture, one of the big ones, at least for me, was to quickly have children after I was married. In fact, I was even asked at my wedding when I was going to have kids. Fifth, and not commonly thought of when talking about societal or gender conditioning, are family traditions and generational patterns. Think parenting styles, career choices, and financial habits, just to name a few. We often mimic what we see. The last example of conditioning I'll mention are professional stereotypes and roles. Think of this like professional profiling. Some professions we automatically connect to women, while others we connect to men. Luckily, this is all changing, but again, depending on when and where you grew up, these stereotypes may still remain. So how deep does this conditioning really go? Honestly, this programming starts early. Here are just some quick examples of just how early it starts. I'm sure you can think of many more. But do you remember hearing pink is for girls and blue is for boys? Or boys shouldn't cry, girls should be nice. Girls have dolls and boys have action figures, and my husband and I still laugh about this one. Things like career choices and marriage and family timelines, those things vary by gender considerably. Or things like caregiving pressures. Who stays home to watch the kids? Who has the primary caregiving responsibilities for aging parents and other family members? Another item that really changes based on gender is body image and appearance standards. Watch ads really closely and you can easily pick up who the target market is and why. There's so much to unpack with this one. It could be a series of videos in and of itself, but just start noticing and you'll see the gender conditioning. Finally, I'll briefly mention leadership style expectations. Here's a common phrase many of us hear in professional settings, the term team player. For a leader who happens to be a man, being a team player can often be seen as humbling and confident. He doesn't have to have all the answers, a true characteristic of a strong leader. While in women, it can often be seen as more of a follower quality and less of a leadership quality. She needs to speak up and take a stand. She can't just be a team player all the time. So what is the impact of all of this conditioning? Seriously, where do I even begin? This conditioning creates internal conflict between desires and expectations. Oftentimes, expectations win out over what we truly want. It can create guilt when deviating from the norm. And the question I always wonder is, who decided what the norm was in the first place, and why haven't we changed it by now? Self-doubt about authentic choices. Even when we follow our heart, we can question whether it was the right decision because it may not be normal. Fear of disappointing others. This is different based on culture and gender. We're so focused on not disappointing others that we forget what happens when we disappoint ourselves and don't live authentically. Imposter syndrome is another impact. And as mentioned last week, this isn't the typical imposter syndrome, that fake it till you make it kind. This is the one where you feel like you're living someone else's life, following someone else's script, literally feeling like an imposter in your own skin. There can also be delayed or abandoned dreams. These are the things you daydream about when you think, what if? Or I wonder what it would be like too. What you're doing is you're just thinking about these things and you're possibly delaying or flat out abandoning what you want for what others want. And finally, and this is a big one, the impact can be chronic stress and anxiety. This shows up physically, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. You're always anxious, nervous about what happens if you deviate from that order of operations in life that I mentioned earlier. The word here is chronic. This is constant, a state of stress and anxiety that is with you all the time, and it can lead to so many other issues, including depression and sadly even death. So how do you even know that you're on autopilot in the first place? Here are some red flags to start watching for. Are you following a life path without questioning why? Feeling disconnected from the choices that you're making? Do you find that you're explaining decisions with, that's just what you do, or that's just how life is? Do you feel a resistance to exploring alternatives? Or feel a discomfort with those who choose a different path or something out of the norm? Finally, do you find yourself defending traditions without actually understanding them in the first place? One thing I want to be crystal clear on is I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the path you've chosen. Only you can determine what is right or wrong for you. What I am saying is to be crystal clear as to whether it's you or your conditioning that is picking your path. There are a few ways to start breaking free and to determine the path you have chosen and whether it's yours or somebody else's. Start your journey with a couple of steps. First, question everything by asking, why do I believe this? Second, examine your wants versus society's expectations. Do I really want that promotion at work? Or will I take it because that's what I should do even though I really want to start my own business? Next, challenge gender-based assumptions. Enough said, there is so much here again. Fourth, explore alternative perspectives and circumstances. You may have wanted this path that you're on at one time. Has that now changed? If so, what caused that change? Fifth, practice conscious decision-making. This is the literal definition of turning off autopilot. Be intentional about your decisions. Pause and think before responding. This is a favorite technique of mine, as I mentioned last week, the intentional pause. Finally, build support networks for change. Are the people you surround yourself with holding you back? How do they support the person you want to be? How do they encourage you to think big and to live big? I know that's a lot, but your life deserves to be lived authentically and not on autopilot. This week, I want you to choose one area of your life and ask yourself, is this what I truly want or what I was taught to want? And share your insights in the comments below. I'd love to hear what's on your mind. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to join our community of conscious, authentic living. Next week, we'll explore a practical exercise that'll help uncover your authentic desires. Thanks for joining us today.